The irony of the situation is the fact that, well, for example, let's say someone made a statement that the only way to live life properly is to understand quantum physics. You have to know quantum mechanics. You have to know about entanglement. You have to know about how everything works, right? You know, so a person would say, "Wow, I mean, like people they go to college for many years and do a lot of reading and research to get to understand that." It's like, and not just that, but you have to have the mind for it. The mathematics is absolutely mind-boggling. So how is it possible that we can do that? We can learn and live and accomplish so much like that. So it would be a quandary. So what are you supposed to do? So the truth is that you already see that people have dealt with the issue. Stephen Hawking wrote a book, A Brief History of Time. And in that book, he takes very complicated physics and makes it accessible, so accessible. He sells millions of copies all around the world. I mean, almost everyone buys the book. I read the book myself. I'm not the biggest fan of his approach to life and his ideas of God and religion, things like that. But the science, the way he wrote was so beautiful, and the ideas he gave over, you ended up learning. He does say if you want some of the equations, you can look at the back of the book and spend some time back there if you want to. You don't have to. I can tell you what's going on in the complicated world of physics just by sharing this information itself. Same thing with Brian Greene. Brian Greene, he made videos, very, very well done, complicated, videos that express the ideas of difficult points that everybody can understand, the layman can understand. And the truth is, this is what has to happen with Kabbalah as well. It's not that everybody is going to be open, be able to open up the Zohar and learn it word by word, although, it depends on your background, depends upon how much time you're prepared to put in and invest to learn it. It's amazing what you can accomplish. But for the most part, that and the result, just the background information you have to understand what they're talking about. Hasidus actually tried to distill that. That's what Hasidus is. They took a lot of these very complicated ideas and they tried to make it more accessible by putting a spin on it that eventually became the different Hasidic approach to Kabbalistic ideas. But even still, it's not really so authentic. The information itself is authentic, but meaning that it's not like you're not learning about spheres per se. You're not learning about the mechanics of creation. They did a great job of bringing it down to earth to make it into everyday life information that you get more. It's more like Musser, I think, in a sense, than it really is like Kabbalah. This in between state where you're able to give over the pure ideas themselves so people can understand the mechanics of creation and how life works all be Kabbalah. That's really what has been kind of the explosion in the last decade or so, where more and more people have been taking the time, the Sforim that come out lately, mostly in Hebrew, but also more and more probably in English, other languages too, where they take those complicated ideas. I know for myself personally, one day I decided about 10, 15 years ago to try and learn Zohar. I don't know if because I saw that it's important for a Gula Barachim, or I just happened to decide to look at it, but I opened it up and I spent about 10 minutes trying to learn it, and I closed it again, and I left it closed because I figured if I learned in Gemara, how different could it possibly be? And it was very different, amazingly. You recognize some of the words, but it's one thing in Gemara, if you don't understand all the words, the concepts themselves are everyday concepts. So a lot of times you can figure out by context what those words might mean, or you can even just skip over them and get the basic idea of what the Gemara is trying to communicate. But you open Kabbalah, you open the Zohar, it's talking about something called Vadla. It's talking about the 10 spheres. What are the spheres? It's talking about partsufim. Just the idea of a partsuf. A partsuf literally means a face, but in Kabbalah it means something a little bit different, more complicated. And this has never happened to me my entire life, but I would see the word partsuf come up over and over and over again. It took a whole year for me to finally understand what the concept of a partsuf was, al pi Kabbalah, according to Kabbalah. So it's complex, but once you understand these ideas, if you understand these ideas, and some, there are people that are sugal who are able to, they put the time, the effort, the work into it. It becomes their responsibility to distill the information to make it available so that people can learn Zohar without actually having to learn Zohar per se. So actually, just started a project the last few days, and it's amazing how complicated it is. The sefer is called Sefer Ditznusa. The Zohar is broken down into different parts, and these are the real. There's nothing more Kabbalistic than these sections of the Zohar. They're the basis of all the Kabbalah. They really outline how Hashem went about making creation from the top down, way beyond quantum mechanics. Quantum mechanics and quantum physics, all these are down in the world that we live in. This is the physical universe that they're examining. This goes way to the top of the system. And you know, I literally spent the whole day, not a whole day time-wise, but it took me at least a day and a half to figure out how to deal with the first sentence. And I'd learned it several times. But as I learned from Shar HaGilgulim and Shar Psukim, it's amazing how quickly you can learn and read something and think you got it if you're only just learning and reading it and giving it over. But when you have to translate it and make it, and you have in mind that people are going to read this and be critical of it, you're trying to come up with the right words, all of a sudden you really, well, I didn't really get that. I thought I did. I didn't really get that. But you know, hopefully, God willing, this will go up and more people will have exposure to this material. Until this point, I don't know if there's much. Just for the record, it has been translated into English, but not necessarily annotated and explained the way it's. They do these things a lot of times, these projects, where somehow just by translating it, it seems that they think it's enough, and it's not, because you have no idea what it's talking about. But this is really how to deal with the situation, and this is part of the history of Kabbalah. The Arizal brings down in Shar HaGilgulim that there was a special opening of the gates of wisdom in the Rashbi's time, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai's time, the time of the Second Temple, but before it was destroyed, or in that time there, after as well. And because the Zohar had to be revealed. Until that time, there was that Kabbalah. He got it from Rabbi Kiva, and Rabbi Kiva got it from the generation before him. It goes all the way back to Moshe, Mount Sinai, but no one really had given it over to a group of the public, or in this case is Talmidim. And that was Lag BaOmer, the year that he died, and the day that he died. And he, you know, that was an explosion, or at least an influx of Kabbalistic knowledge that was meant to kick off that stage of history. Because really, the Kabbalistic line is actually the opposite of regular Torah Sheba'al Peh, of Nigla, right? There's two parts to Torah. There's Nigla, the revealed part of Torah, what you find in the Chumash, you find in the Sefer Torah, what you find in the Gemara, you find in the Shulchan. It's all Nigla, it's all revealed. Nothing hidden about it. You just open a book and you can read and learn, right? Nistar is the hidden part of Torah, and that is not available and accessible to everybody. And Nigla was the clearest at Mount Sinai, because God gave it over to Moshe, the entire written Torah and the entire oral law. He gave it over. He taught it to Zakanim. He taught first Arnakon and his sons and Zakanim, and this was passed down. And this is what's been going on for thousands of years, from Rebbe to student, and all the yeshivas, the Bati Midrashos. This is what the whole history of it, right? But it's beginning weaker as time goes on. We're writing more of it down because the connection to it is becoming weaker. What we call Yeridas Adoris, the going down of the generation. So, you know, previous generations knew a lot more and didn't have to talk about it because it was everyday knowledge. But as we persecution and assimilation and all kinds of other factors, and just almost like a broken telephone type of situation, it's amazing that we know as much as we know as clearly as we know it, given all the factors involved in trying to eradicate it. So it's been going like down, like a stock market that's losing money, it's going down. Towards Nistar, Kabbalah has been working in the opposite direction. It's becoming more revealed with time. The Rashbi brings it into the world, later on the Arizal, before him the Ramak, they start to bring it. In fact, I'm going to read you a quote right now. The Leshem brings this down because obviously some people are still living in the Dark Ages. Some people still think the Kabbalah is not part of Torah Sheba'al Peh. Some people think it's just an extra, or it was made up by rabbis. Even to this very day, how people have told me that it's Kabbalah. It's not really part of the Torah per se, and we don't need to learn it. It doesn't really have any information that's important. That's relevant. Completely off the mark. Or the Zohar is not authentic. It's mistaken, etc., etc. So the Leshem writes the following thing, dealing with the issue. He says the holy and elevated Ramak, that's the Rav Moshe Cordovero in the 1500s, right before the Arizal, already remonstrated in his work Pardes, right? Pardes Ramonim, in the section, okay, anyhow, since the wisdom of the truth, which is Kabbalah, has become revealed and become known amongst all Jewish scholars, which is the inheritance of the assembly of Yaakov through Moshe Rabbeinu from the mouth of God, anyone who denies or argues with it is called a kofar. Anybody who claims that Kabbalah is not an authentic part of the Torah has the status of a kofar, as if they're denying a part of Torah Shebaal Peh. They have denied a portion of the oral tradition and have removed themselves from Amunus Klal Yisrael, from the main, the main part of Torah. From the time that it was made known among the Jewish people, from the time of the Ramban onward, there's not been a single Torah scholar from the Torah scholars of the Jewish people or the philosophers. There's known from the Gaon and the Chacham and the Bala Keda to what extent Idmar, etc., etc. Okay, he says, etc. Okay, goes on. Prior to this, however, now there's prior to the time of the Ramban. The Ramban is the end of the 1100s, 1200s. So prior to the Ramban, he says that it became known. But from the time of the Ramban, after the time of the Ramban onward, became known among the entire Jewish people, and no Chacham from all the Chacham Israel, from whose waters we drink, through their commentaries on Talmud and Poskim, have doubted it. In other words, the mainstream rabbis who are if you're following their halachas, which we do, right? They themselves have said it is authentic. There's nothing to argue with anymore. Specifically for someone who has merited to see the words, has merited to see it, the words speak for themselves. Those of the Holy Zohar testifying that they are from the Rashbi, and the words of the Arizal testifying to the power of the Ri. It is the essence of the truth itself. So, no discussion. I mean, people will still throw it at you. Some people are intimidated by Kabbalah. They don't want to know that they have to even look at it, so therefore they still use these arguments. But clearly, that is the situation, and it's becoming more and more revealed as time goes on. And even those for people, at one time, yeah, there were parts of the Zohar that maybe were mistaken. There was some bad copying. There was some, poor transmission. But as Rav Chaim Vital points out in the Tikkunim, that the Arizal came along and then made those corrections. So the Zohar that we have in our possession today, sometimes you'll find in the Zohar there'll be different versions of the same thing. Sometimes, but it doesn't change anything. The overall information is the same, and now you have more and more commentaries coming out to help take that information and again make it more accessible and put it in terms that the average person can understand. Point number one. Point number two, the purpose of creation. Why does Kabbalah make a difference? Again, for the longest time, tradition has been Gemara, Halacha, Medrash, fine. En Yaakov, you learn it between Mincha and Mariv on Shabbos afternoons, maybe instead of Pirkei Avos, something like that. But Kabbalah just seems to be something for mystics and people who they don't either fit in or they don't want to fit in, or they're a little bit more spiritual than other people, not for the general population. So why is it so important? How did we miss the point? What are we supposed to do to make up for the fact that we can't access or learn that we're supposed to learn? How do we get around that? So first of all, he says the following thing: the purpose of all that has been emanated is to clothe the head that is not known. What does that even mean? God, in all of his awesome essence and beyond comprehension, he did something beyond. It's so fantastic. It's just too difficult to even understand why he would go to such an extent. It's like if you open up a Swiss watch, just the Swiss watch itself, you see all these gears, and you're wondering why are so many gears necessary to make a watch keep time. It's absolutely incredible how they can actually, they can create this thing, they could figure it out mathematically, and somehow work it out that by turning a little dial, these gears can keep time for about 24 hours, and pretty accurately too. But that's nothing compared to the gears of creation.